I wanted to be at Texas State. I chose to be at Texas State. I'm from Texas. That was important to me. I always knew if the right guy got this job, you better watch out.
You better watch out. This is Win Now or Get Bent, episode 125. If you don't already know, I'm Kev Chardello, coming to you on Tuesday, September 12th. And the Bobcats got a new commit. Soccer beat Houston, right? That's all that happened this weekend. All right. Bobcats lost to the Birds. They fall 0-5 in the I-35 rivalry. Tough one. A physical game. Another one-score loss, 20-13. Great crowd, though. Lots of fans out there. I know a lot of the Road Birds turned into the last episode. Didn't take too kindly to me saying it might be a neutral site, but Bobcats showed up. Saw all week that Texas State was talking about they're going to load up shuttles and everything. I wasn't just making it up. They must have short-term memories. They forgot about some of these previous games where a lot of these fans showed up. But we're going to unpack that game. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about some of the other sports, soccer, volleyball, recruiting, quick updates on those, and then we'll unpack this game and talk about the rest of the season and all that, because it's a long season. 10 games left in the season. Still a really fun team, so lots more to go over. You know who else is with us for the rest of the season? TGC LLC. Our friends over at the GalindoCollective.com. That's G-A-L-I-N-D-O, GalindoCollective.com. A team of professional consultants dedicated to helping others realize their business potential through people, planning, and practice. Their services cover a wide range of areas such as business strategy, marketing, human resources, and financial planning. If you own property and want to maximize the profitability of it or your business, contact TGC at thegalindocollective.com and follow their social media platforms on Twitter at TGC_LLC, Instagram, and Facebook. My guy Rick Galindo over there, true Tech State sicko, Tech State grad himself. Thank you for sponsoring us through the whole season. Hit them up at thegalindocollective.com. Also with us for the rest of the season, Balcones Roofing and Remodeling. We introduced them last weekend. Real excited to talk about Balcones, the most experienced F-Wave roofing contractor in Central Texas. F-Wave is a highly impact-resistant lifetime shingle with stunning designer curb appeal. It is the only roofing product on the market with an exclusive hail warranty. All of us know here in Texas, a hail warranty, that's as good as gold. You don't have to deal with the insurance every time your roof gets messed up from hail damage. You do it one time. You don't have to come back and mess with it again. But it's a new sicko over there. My guy Carl Larson over there at Balcones Roofing and Remodeling. I think his first Texas State game was on Saturday. Tough one for you, Carl. Hang in there. The Birds have been a thorn in the Bobcats' side, but this series extends till 2031, so maybe they'll get to pull it out soon enough. But until then, lots of season left, and Balcones Roofing and Remodeling will be with us for the rest of the season. Thank you to new sicko Carl Larson over there. Contact them at balconesroofsaustin.com. It's Balcones, B-A-L-C-O-N-E-S, roofsaustin.com. You can call them at 512-937-8805. That's 512-937-8805. And follow them on Twitter at Balcones Roofing. Pretty fun on Twitter. He's a fun Twitter follow, so check him out there. Thanks to TGC and Balcones Roofing and Remodeling. We'll start with soccer. Like I said, we'll talk about some of the other sports. And we'll get to football. Don't worry. I know a lot of you are itching. A lot of you have your thoughts and feelings. Maybe some of you are road birds, just wanting to hate watch. I don't know. Morbid observation. Either way, appreciate the numbers. You guys have been great. Keep the comments coming. You know, it just brings more eyes to it. So soccer, 3-game winning streak for the Bobcats. 1-0 win over Houston. 1-0. I'm sorry, we're talking soccer. We got to use soccer terms. 1-0 victory over Houston. Houston was ranked number 13 before that game. Victoria Meza scored the lone goal in the game in the 74th minute. Late goal to take that lead and take that win over the Cougars. Always nice to see that. That was her second goal of the season. So shout out to Victoria. Shout out to the Bobcats on that win. Volleyball went 1-2 in the Bobcat Classic. They won the last one. They beat Abilene Christian. They started out losing to Southeastern Louisiana and then to Cal. After having some success there, it dropped off a little bit this weekend, but they'll pick up in conference play here real soon. I think it's after there's one tournament this weekend, and then it's ULM time. They're going to be in conference, so Bobcats will be in Sun Belt play before you know it. All the teams, soccer, volleyball, and football, before you know it. Two more games, and we're in Sun Belt play for football. Recruiting, I mentioned it. Lakel McCowan, Clear Falls linebacker. He's a legacy. His dad was played here in the 90s, LJ McCowan. Shout out to my guy Radar Hubble on Twitter. He pointed that out because he had, I guess Lakel had legacy continues on the post when he committed on Twitter. People were asking about the legacy, and Radar jumped in with that. I was thinking it was maybe Trey McCowan at first. Anybody remember that? Or McGowan? I'm saying McCowan, but it's McGowan with the G. Trey played Fran era linebacker. I think he may have been backing up David Mayo, maybe even sometimes playing next to him. He was a pretty good player. I feel like he may have worn number 52. I don't know why that number is popping in my head, but that's what pops in my head when I think of Trey. But yeah, Lakel, he has offers from Washington State, Boise State, Memphis, Arkansas State, UTRGV, Louisiana Tech, and he had some other smaller offers as well. 12th commit for the 2024 class, second linebacker, and not used to commits happening during the season. We didn't see that a lot in the Spavital era, so this is new, interesting territory for sure. But it's good. They have 12. They have the early signing day coming up in December, so to already have 12, you got to hold on to some of those, no doubt. But you think if guys commit before that signing day, they intend on signing during the early period. Well, I saw a situation with that last year with Taylor Starling. I guess that was this year, but it was just so long ago. I said last year. It was in December, where he committed before December for the 2023 class committed to Texas State. Then he got UNT and UTSA offers. He eventually chose UNT. But that was a time where you see a guy commit before the early period and then not sign. It's usually an indicator that they're not fully committed. So if they can sign all or most of these 12, that's a pretty good start before the second signing period in February. But let's do it. Let's unpack this loss. Let's talk about the Texas State loss to UTSA. We'll start here. Fans won that game. The Bobcats lost, but the fans won. 49,342. I think that's the right number. A lot of fans, almost 50,000 fans, just over 49,000 fans. That is the second largest crowd UTSA has drawn at the Alamo Dome. That is the largest crowd since the very, very first game, when there's all this anticipation and excitement over the inaugural game and all of this. They were able to draw 56,000, but since then they have not been able to draw this many. And that's the Texas State effect. Whether they would like to admit it or not, they scoffed at the last pod when I said there was going to be a lot of Texas State fans, and there were a lot of Texas State fans. You could hear the scores on the TV. I watched the replay after the game. Specifically, I didn't want to watch it. You got to, when you talk about them, do a pod. I wanted to hear if you could hear the fans, and you could. And so that's hats off to Texas State for showing up. It's hats off to UTSA as well for showing up. You know, they unveiled their banner as two-time Conference USA champs. They did it in front of both fans, which could have been a nice point for them to bring up on Twitter. Like, it's nice to show off the banner in front of all these Texas State fans, but they didn't even want to admit there were Texas State fans there. And there definitely were, because they have a game on Friday against Army, and I want to see those attendance numbers. I want to see how many you really draw. You're in one of the largest cities in the country. Top 10 in the country, pretty sure that's right. You should be able to draw a lot more than you usually do. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes, especially coming off 2 consecutive Conference USA championships. Frank Harris back, paying $1 million come back, paying Trailer millions of dollars to stick around. Think they'd draw more, but you know, it's nice of Texas State to come to town and up their numbers a little bit. See you next year, right? In San Marcos, 2024. I don't have the date. What date is that one on? September 7th. Actually, you know what? I did remember it. September 7th next year. I like next year's schedule. That's why that one's in my head. It's the one, Arizona State. I think it's 3 non-conference games in San Marcos. Arizona State comes to San Marcos. So that'll be a good one. But the next game at the Alamo Dome will be 2025, and I think it's going to be bigger than this 49,000. I think it'll be, who knows? Who knows if it'll get to that 56,000. I think that'll depend on how good both these teams are. But this game was an indicator that this rivalry, it's a legit rivalry. I know it's gone UTSA. It's one-sided. It's gone UTSA, at least on the football field. It's very one-sided. They have a 5-0 lead. I mean, it's incredible. 4 different coaches, over the years. It's been quite the saga trying to beat the Roadrunners. It was just showing it not quite there yet. And we'll get into that. I want to talk a little bit more about this rivalry, because I think a lot was made about this game not being a rivalry. And that was extremely discounted, the passion that these two fans have against each other. I mean, my brother's a UTSA grad. You betcha he was at that game, enjoying that win, texting me. He wasn't rubbing it in too much. At a certain point, it feels like punching down to him, I'm sure. But it's but that right there just goes to show you how close these two fan bases are. I mean, they're related. They're intermarried. They're neighbors. It's a fascinating deal, and it's interesting to see two G5s come together and do this. And that's what's great, that this series is continuing until 2031, the next 8 seasons. At least it's scheduled. I mentioned on the last pod, I hope it doesn't go the way of TCU, SMU, and that this does continue, because it's a good draw for both programs. That's a good chunk of change for UTSA when all these fans show up to a game. And and I guess I said this somewhat in jest. Well, I've said this before, where if Texas State were to lose that game on Saturday, they should have to pay the buyout in the contract between the two schools for that series. I rescind that. I take it back, because I don't want this series to go anywhere. Even though the Bobcats have an uphill battle to even get it to even, I still think that this is a very, very worthy rivalry for both programs. It's good. It's good for a non-conference game that isn't against a P5 or anything to draw a type of crowd like that. It's really good regionally. I hope it does stay true until 2031. That'd be great. It'd be great for this area and great for all of that. I hate when people say it's not a rivalry. I feel like that it's first off, it's disrespecting all the other sports at colleges. Okay. All right. Yes. UTSA has a 5-0 lead in football. Okay. But if we're talking other sports, it's way different. And I was going to get to it. I'll get to it now though. Texas State versus UTSA all time in all the sports, football included. Texas State has a lead 241 to 175 and two ties. I should have looked up those 2 ties. What were those 2 ties? So right there, that's a significant lead when you combine the sports. Baseball has beaten the Bobcats 62 times to 39 losses. Volleyball has beaten them 60 times to 14 losses. So to say it's not a rivalry is just forgetting about the decades of a rivalry that was there in sports that aren't football. Yes, football is the big bad daddy. I know it. I spend this podcast talking about it all the time. But there's other sports. Okay, to say it's not a rivalry, it's honestly, it's intentionally perpetrating their own narrative when somebody says that. Whether it's a coach, like we saw with Withers, you remember when he was saying it, or a media member saying it, it's just there. It's intentionally misleading, because it is one. As I just demonstrated, as I perpetrated my narrative by telling you the overall record in all the sports. But that can't be discounted. That can't be forgotten. When talking about this rival, when talking about these fan bases going against each other and showing up for games, that's something that somebody who hasn't gone to these games would say. And I've been to all 5, unfortunately. The very first one as a fan in 2012. The last 4 I was at least paid to go. So, the check makes it eases the pain a little bit. But it's still painful to walk out. But yeah, that's enough about the rivalry and the fans, because those were positives in my mind. The Texas State fans, the positives for Texas State, I should say. But the game itself was not very positive. It's a loss. There's no moral victories. Even everything I just said about this rivalry and how it's alive and it has juice. Gosh, and I'm not done with it yet, I guess. But for this program to be so down, they haven't won more than 4 games since 2014, and they still muster fans to show up on the road against the team that has a 4-0 lead on them. And they still show up. What does that tell you? This is a viable fan base. People who aren't around it like to big brother it, but that's the truth, man. But about the game, Bobcats, they came out slow. They ended flat. The 3 and outs to start out, that set them behind. The blocking was poor, which made the run game poor, and the run game couldn't get started. So they weren't scared of the pass game at all. They were just teeing off on Finley. Let's see, what do I got here? 3 of 14 on 3rd down for the Bobcats. That's terrible. It's really bad. 1 of 2 on 4th down, and that was on the same drive. They got a 4th down, and then later on they turned it over on downs. So the initial 4th down they converted didn't lead to points. Time of possession, they got killed 37-23. 37 minutes to 22 minutes. 92 plays to 59 plays. UTSA 92 plays. Texas State 59. 372 yards to 242, which I got to commend the defense a little bit as I read that stat, because 92 plays and only 372 yards for UTSA. They had a pretty good day. 20 points was enough to beat this offense, I guess. That's the disappointing aspect of it. 6 penalties to 1 as well. I know some people made some stuff about the refs. I don't blame the refs. There was a weird unsportsmanlike call that I just didn't understand the math on it. Maybe I just misunderstand the rule where Josh Eaton got an unsportsmanlike conduct, and so did a receiver for UTSA. I want to say Cephas, but I don't want to put that on him if it's not him, and a coach for UTSA. So there was 3 unsportsmanlike conducts, 2 of them on UTSA, but they said that offset. That seemed weird. I know some people made some stuff about the intentional grounding. I meant to go back and look closer at that one. People said there was a receiver in the area. I mean, the pressure was coming on him. He pretty clearly threw it out of the back of the end zone, and I think he was still in the tackle box. So I'm not terribly mad at that one. We do have a recap video. Check that out. Should be out by the time you hear this. Texas State fans, I know what you're thinking. I don't want to watch that recap video. There's some good Texas State highlights in there too. We had to be balanced with the whole deal. You can see some of their glowing fans that UTSA had. We got some nice shots of them. But yeah, go enjoy that video. And on one of the touchdowns, the one where Harris connects with Willie McCoy, that 20-yard touchdown in the 3rd quarter, towards the end of the 3rd quarter, we have an angle where you can see Tavion Coleman being held. So there you go. You can at least watch that video to see that hold, see that missed call. So there's at least one missed call that the Wizard caught on his camera. Shout out to the Wizard, man. Got great content. And he put together a great video despite a loss. Go check it out. You'll see a lot. I was talking about how good the defense played. A lot of defensive highlights, the touchdowns, of course. An interesting angle on that Cole Wilson catch. Tyler Huff, former tight end for the Bobcats. I know he listens. He's a sicko. Shout out to Tyler. Hope you're listening to this one. He pointed out on Twitter when I was talking about that play that maybe it was the momentum that carried Cole Wilson over, and that's why he fell, the momentum to reach for the ball. And he said it actually looks like he's looking back at the defender, and that's what tripped him up a little bit. In the angle that Zach Webb, the Wizard, got, you can see that. It's like, yeah, he did look at the defender. So pretty interesting video there. But yeah, roundabout way to say I'm not blaming the refs. I don't blame the refs there, even though it's 6-1 on those penalty calls. I mean, after the Cole Wilson catch, and he tripped at the 7-yard line, they came out and got a false start. It was on Trenton Scott, and Trenton Scott's in there because Nash Jones is hurt, and that's a whole other deal we'll talk about. There were a lot of negatives, but there were positives as well. And I'll get to the positives, but the negatives, that's why I was reluctant on the last pod when some of you were like, okay, what's the record going to be now after game 1? And I was like, I'm not ready. It's not a full evaluation. I saw proof of concept. I wanted to see the concept. Didn't see the concept on Saturday. Didn't see it. I saw where it succeeded in some areas, but then I saw its flaws. I saw the flaws of the offensive line, specifically when Nash Jones goes down and they have to play some musical chairs trying to figure out what are they going to do at tackle, moving a guard over to tackle, who are you going to put in at guard. There was a lot going on with that situation and that ripple effect that led to you can't run the ball because there's no blocking. It led to a whole deal. And so there are flaws with the blocking. I was pretty happy with the defense. And I remember I mentioned last time that there was some stuff they could have done better in coverages, and I still think that, but this front seven, this defense relies on the front seven to get after the quarterback. And they did. They got 5 sacks. They had a pretty big day. Wasn't enough to get the victory, but it was still, a decent output for them. I know I guess I wrote down I have a question from the Rev. Let me look that up. A guy on Twitter, I've answered some of those questions before. I saw a couple questions. Y'all got pretty early on the questions, and I'll answer them. I know I saved them because I thought they were good ones. Yeah, the Rev, my guy Flint on Twitter at the Rev SWT. I'll always answer his questions. I've been seeing him around for a long time. All right, I had to find that question. Here we go from my guy Flint at the Rev SWT on Twitter. Not doing a mailbag, just answering this one. Was this a fluke for the O-line, or is Baylor that bad? I don't think Baylor is bad because they held pretty tough against Utah. I think they may have underestimated Texas State. I think they may have been looking forward to that Utah game a little bit too much. But I don't think they were bad at all. I think that Texas State did have a really good game, and they came up against a really good front seven that wasn't underestimating them, that was taking this seriously as a rivalry game. And Nash Jones going down, that was a big part of it, and I think that's going to be a big part of the season. He's going to be out for a while. His leg was wrapped up after the game. He was laying in a cart. GJ Kinney even said after the game that he was not confident, that he thought he was going to be out for a while. So that doesn't bode well for those prospects. And that's huge at that left tackle spot. He's a leader of one of the leaders of that team, definitely a leader of that offensive line. He's a captain on the team. It's a huge loss. It's a huge loss, no matter how much time he misses. And saw it when other players came in there. They were moving other guys around. Eventually, Dorian Strawn moved from guard to tackle. Trenton Scott went out there. He had some struggles. I mentioned that, which I hate to say because I personally like him a lot. I've mentioned before how I was at his signing day and everything, but that was one of his first times of extended play, and it didn't go great. I'd like to see him get back out there and try again. But it's hard for me to say whether this was a fluke or not. I don't think it was a fluke because they were injured, and that was a really good front seven team. I think this UTSA team might be the best team they play for the rest of the regular season. And I mean, if you told me before those 2 games, Tech State's going to be 1-1 after the first 2 non-conference games, I'd be satisfied. I would hope it would have gone the opposite way that it did because of the emotions behind it. But imagine if another team that was the 2-time Conference USA champs, just any other team, UAB, whoever, and the Bobcats lost a 20-13 game like that. where they hung in there. Would you be as upset, or is it upsetting because it's UTSA? That's the part when you look at this to think about. And I know I totally waited away from your question, Rev, but that thought was just in my head, and I wanted to get that part out because I felt it was important. But it's the emotions behind it, because it was a bad game. All the thing I've talked about, how they couldn't get the ball running and blocking was bad, and Nash Jones goes down, and the offensive line has all these problems, and the offense can't move the ball. And was it 3 for 14 on third down? And it's just there's a lot you can get down about when looking at that game when it's UTSA. But that's still a really good opponent, and you can't discount that. This is still 2 wins that the Bobcats have. Oh, I have a low battery. Hold on one sec. Sorry, hearing that in real time. I'm linking in my computer. Bam. All right, we're locked in. No more low battery. Now, this is a really good UTSA team that handled that Texas State offensive line. So I haven't seen enough to say it's a fluke or not, because we saw the first game. It's the proof of the concept. We didn't see the concept on Saturday. We needed to see the concept, and we didn't. In my feeling, I said it even before the season, I expected this offense to take longer to gel. It's a brand new offense. This includes the offensive line. It's going to take longer it's a new offense. It's not necessarily more complicated, but it is different for sure type of offense than what has seen in the past. It is more complicated as well. Now I'm thinking about some of the packages they were even pulling out there. But it's different. So it's going to take time, especially with 53 new players, especially with all these new coaches, all these new variables that went into it. I wasn't expecting it to look as good as it did against Baylor. I expected it to look more like it looked against UTSA. So that what that showed me on Saturday is that everybody still needs more time, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Defense wasn't flawless. I mentioned that there's some things in coverages they got to work on. Brian Holloway looked terrific at inside linebacker. The defensive line looked terrific despite a handful of those guys going down as well. Tavian Coleman went down. Christian Rory went down. Sam Latham went down, although Kenny did say Latham will be back. But Jason Gold's still not in there. They're missing some bodies there. But this offense is going to take time to figure out this system. But when I say take time, what does take time mean? And I was saying this in fall camp, 3 or 4 games. This non-conference. This is the acclimation period for everyone, for them to figure it out, and for us to watch it and figure out, okay, how good is this team? Let's acclimate to our expectations. What should I expect from this team? Because right now the expectation is they have one big win and they come out flat the next one. They can't capitalize on that momentum because that's early. They can change my mind. There's 10 games left in the rest of the season, but they didn't capitalize on that big win. They thought about last week too much, and they should have thought about this week, because this week it's Jackson State. That's a FCS program that Dion left, so that, they must not be good, right? Well, you don't want to underestimate them, because they're not going to underestimate the Bobcats. Baylor underestimated the Bobcats. Don't want to underestimate that opponent. But I guess that was a really roundabout way to answer that first part of the question with the O-line that I'm waiting to see on whether or not I feel like it's a fluke. Because I feel like the players are still there. Nash Jones going down, man, that's a big one. That's a big loss. I guess it's even the second part of your question as well, is how bad is it? Seems pretty bad. Hopefully it's not season ending, but not a good one. How angry are you thinking the team? Oh, how angry are you thinking the team will be for our team opener? I hope pretty mad. Let's look at that home opener real quick. So I meant to look up before the pod Texas State versus Jackson State odds. We'll do that real fast. I don't see any odds on this one. Yeah, it looks like they are. Is that -6? Do I have that right? -6. So yeah, Texas State. Texas State would be, is going to be favored in this game. They should be mad, and this should be a game. It's an FCS opponent. It should be a game that they should try to put up a lot of points, light up the scoreboard, as they like to say. They did that quite a bit last season. This should be one of those games where they try to get 50 and remind people what this offense is, because 13 points isn't going to do it. 13 points against a rival isn't going to do it. So, yeah, appreciate you sending in that question, Rev. It's funny, as I was looking at Revs, I saw another one, and I'll go ahead and answer it. It's from my guy Alonzo at RunnerXC8. What's up? I saw you out there starting fights on my behalf. Don't do that, man. Don't get in fights. Don't meet up any of these road birds. Let them talk their mess. Who's the starting QB for Texas State football next week, and why is it Malik Hornsby? I wanted to answer that one because I wanted to address all the Hornsby talk, which it's warranted, especially after a loss when Finley did struggle, and Kenny admitted that after the game. He said he had an up and down game, but I still believe in Finley. I still say put him out there. The first 2 games, I saw enough that I'm pretty confident. I saw another really good scramble against UTSA, that 55-yard pass to Cole Wilson. Go back and look at it. He's got pressure coming in on him. He steps into the pocket, really steps into that throw, and just unloads it. And I've talked about his throwing motion before, where he doesn't necessarily step into every throw. He'll be flat-footed, and he'll just kind of whip his wrist sometimes and get that ball 15, 20 yards pretty good. But, man, you see him when he really steps into it and he steps into that throw, he can launch it. If he's got a clean pocket, he's going to deliver the ball. That pocket was not clean. He was sacked 6 times. He was hurried a lot more other times. I'm going to tell you what I didn't see was an interception. And I, like that, first 2 games, haven't seen an interception. So I'm still on Finley. I would have liked to seen Hornsby in some sort of package, maybe change of pace. They have hinted at potentially Hornsby will get in there and have some sort of series or something like that, and it hasn't manifested. We saw him almost get in there after the Cole Wilson catch, and he went out there, didn't take the snap, but he was out there. He was on the field, so close, such a tease. But maybe even against Jackson State, if the game's going right, or if it's not going right and you want to change it up, throw him out there. I'd love to see it in these first 3 games. Malik Hornsby getting out there a little bit. I don't want to see him starting. I still think Finley is the guy for this team. And it's definitely not time to bail on him, because he wasn't the reason they lost. They couldn't block. And because they couldn't block, they couldn't run. UTSA wasn't afraid of the run. They were just ready for the pass, teeing off on TJ Finley, knowing that they couldn't block. So I don't put that on Finley at all. 1.1 yards per carry rushing. That's 31 yards and 29 carries. That's awful. That's really bad. So no, Finley still, but I get it. I understand why you're already itching for Hornsby, especially when you have someone of that caliber of talent sitting on the bench and you're seeing your team losing. You're like, that might fix it. But it also could have a lot of damage to Finley and the progress he's made in his in the role. You don't want to make him disgruntled, by pulling him for something that's really hasn't been his fault. Up and down game. Kenny said it afterwards. Not the reason they lost. Yeah. Oh, man. Bobcats still punching above their weight this season. Both those games. I mentioned it earlier before. Underdogs in both games. They beat the spread. Anybody listening to the pod, if you're a degenerate gambler, all my degenerate gambler friends are happy. Shout out to my friend Ryan Nettleship. I know he's been tuning in. I helped him out. I'll just say that. If you listen to the pod and you took the points, then you were happy, because they've beat the spread. Told you to do the same deal against Baylor. And that's what do they say? Great teams cover. Bobcats have been covering. They've been hanging in there with these tough opponents. And even looking at the rest of the schedule, I mentioned it before that on the last episode, I didn't want to go through and guess what we were looking at, for the rest of the season and what I was thinking. But we'll go ahead and we'll do that. We'll take a look because I'm still feeling 6-6. I'm still confident with that one. But I'm confident in a different way than when I gave it to you in fall camp. When I was asked, what are you predicting for the season? And I said 6-6. If I felt that I was going to be wrong with 6-6, I thought it was going to be because they didn't win 6 games. That they lost. That they lost over 6 games. So I don't know. I had to think about that for a sec. But that's not how I'm feeling now. I feel like if 6-6 is wrong, it's because they're going to actually get to like 7, 8 wins. Because when I look at the schedule and you're looking at how the Sun Belt is shaking out. But we'll start with this weekend. Jackson State, that's a win. Nevada, win. I have them winning the next 2. I had them winning the next 2 when I talked about this in fall camp. When I thought it would be the opposite type of 1-1 than they're at right now, and I'm still confident they'll get those 2 wins. Let's see where are we at next here. Why did I lose that? I'm bad at scrolling the computer and talking on the pod today. Usually I'm much better at it, but I'm somewhat failing at it. Southern Miss, there we go. Southern Miss. I had the Bobcats losing that one. I think they still will. I think they'll win the next 2, and they'll kind of have a little bit of a humbling moment against Southern Miss. I think they can beat this Louisiana team. I mean, Old Dominion just beat them. I think this Louisiana team is a little weakened. So I'm going to give the Bobcats that one, and that's one I didn't have for them before in the 6-6. So right now we're at 4 wins. ULM the following weekend, I have them winning that one. So we're at 5. And when I was doing 6-6 in the fall, one of my big upsets was homecoming against Troy. Still a tough one, but I'm going to give it to the Bobcats. We're going to stick with it. I'll give it Troy. So that's 6 right there. Already at 6. 4 games left on the docket. I think they'll have a little bit of a humbling moment against Georgia Southern. Lose that one. Go back the next week. Beat Coastal Carolina. Beat Arkansas State. That's 8 wins there. And I'm tempted to say South Alabama to end the season for a 9th win. I think they could win it, and I'm more confident that they could get there more than ever, but I'm still going to say loss. So I'm going to end it at 8. I don't want to put the cart before the horse and give them 9 wins. Give them 3 more than I had last time. But I'll give them 8. We'll do 8. So I'm still confident, even after looking at that loss, and even maybe because of that loss, that they weren't completely run over by this team. Because Texas State, even when you go back to 2020 and that 51-48 loss, the Allen Arona game, and I hope the Cole Wilson play doesn't become like Allen Arona, because Cole Wilson definitely shouldn't be blamed for that play. That was a terrific play. It was a terrific throw and a terrific play. That throw was better than anything we saw last year. Okay, that was a great throw. If you want to feel better about TJ Finley, but going back to that 2020 game, that was right at the beginning of the Jeff Traylor era. It was before they became 2-time Conference USA champs. They won in 21 and 2022. So it was before UTSA has gotten to the point that they are at now. They are at another level. 3 years later, 3 years after that 2020 game, UTSA has elevated quite a bit. And to hang against that team that close after everything that has happened for UTSA over the last couple of years, and to still have a lot of those really good players, Frank Harris, Joshua Cephas, saw a lot of them on defense, a lot of familiar faces on defense as well, Rashad Wisdom. So it's to hang with that team. This team, this experienced team, 2-time conference champion team, is that made me realize that this team, are they there yet? Are they there where they can beat this UTSA team? No, but they're hanging with them. And that is a positive. That is a trend in the right direction. That this opponent that has gone farther since the last time they met, and it's still a close game like the last time they met. It wasn't as close, wasn't that type of high-scoring game or anything. If anything, it felt more controlled, a little bit more care into both sides' defenses. And I was expecting a shootout like 2020, but it was, it was not that. G.J. Kinney, still the apprentice, not quite the master over Jeff Traylor. It's and that's something that also should have been accounted for is the humbling the old coach put on his former player. You got to remember that Traylor is very experienced, knows a lot of ball. And he demonstrated that with some of the stuff he did. For Texas State, I wanted to talk about the Sun Belt a little bit, especially the West, because the West is pretty open. Even looking at it, looking at the West Division, I just pulled it up. ULM on the tippy top. Shout out to Dustin Thibodeau. He does the Fun Belt podcast. He showed up. He was there at the UTSA Texas State game, wearing a Texas State polo. And his ULM Warhawks are 2-0 on top of the West Division. But there's a lot of 1-1 there. There's only one 0-2 team. It's Arkansas State. We're a Wolves down pod over here, so that one's nice. We'll root for ULM. Not really. We'll root for Dustin. I like Dustin. But a lot of 1-1. Everyone else is 1-1. South Alabama, Southern Miss, Troy, Louisiana, Texas State, all 1-1. So it's still a wide open competition there. There is a path for them to make some headway in those standings, especially if they do get to those 8 wins, like I was talking about, maybe 9 if they get that South Alabama. There's still a lot that can be done this season, and it could still trend towards one of the better seasons this program has had. Maybe the best one record wise it's had as an FBS team. It could get there. It's going to take some work. They got to fix some stuff. They got to figure out that offensive line. But they can get there. I guess I do have one last note. Shout out to Mason Shipley. I should give Shipley a shout out. He hit two 40+ yard field goals. There were some questions about, are they worried about the kicker if they went for it on 4th down so many times against Baylor? I think that can be put to rest. Shipley, he hit 1 field goal last year, and it's the school record, I'm pretty sure. I think I have that right. Like a 54-yarder might be the school record. I know he was the kickoff man, so he's got a strong leg. It's good to see that. That'll do it. That's enough of it. On to Jackson State. We're on to Jackson State. I don't know if that spread I told you is right, so don't bet it if it's 6 points. That didn't look right. I don't know. Is it dicey for FCS? I'm not much of a gambler. But make sure you subscribe to our Patreon, patreon.com/winnoworgetbent. WNOGB.com. Get some hats and merch. I'm wearing the shirt right now. There you go. No bucket hat this time. Oh, I was looking for it. I don't even have it within arm's reach, or I'd pull it out for you. But WNOGB.com. We've got sicko shirts, mugs, lots of cool stuff for you. Check that out. If you want to be one of our sponsors, partner up with us just like TGC or Bocconi's Roofing and Remodeling, hit us up at wnogbkeff@gmail.com. That's WNOGBKEFF@gmail.com. Like, subscribe, comment, rate, sign your friends up for accounts, and like and subscribe on there too, on all our video channel for YouTube, our audio versions on Spotify and Apple. Thanks again to TGC and Balcones Roofing and Remodeling. Thanks to the Wizard, Zachary Webb, and thank you to you sickos for tuning in. Tough one. It's nice. The usual gang is probably going to be back for this one. There's a little more hubris around Texas State. A few more fans wanted to tune in and catch up on the Cats. We'll see how many of them stick around. If not, it's good to see the usual crowd as always, guys. That old familiar feeling, huh, Bobcats? One day we'll be free. But all right, that'll do it. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Win now or get bent.